This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. And welcome to my review of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power Season 2 premiere. This is the first 3 episodes, and sorry, this is out like 2 days late. I just haven't had any time to record over the last 2 days. I'm actually recording this like Friday night at like 8:30. And since I don't have enough time to record both this and a video for today, I just pushed this to today, about 13 hours later. So going into the premiere for this season, honestly, I was impressed by it. I haven't seen too much of what people are saying online. I know there's a group that's going to be hating this no matter what. There's also going to be the group that loves it no matter what. And I rewatched the first season a few weeks ago. I didn't think it was that bad. I'm not saying that it's incredible. I'm thinking that one of the lines that it was okay. But this season, honestly, I think it's been good so far. I mean, it's nothing close to the incredible masterpiece of cinema that the original Lord of the Rings trilogy is, and it still doesn't come anywhere close to the flawed but enjoyable Hobbit films. I think that is very clearly, of at least live action adaptations of Tolkien's work, is a very easy number three. But honestly, this season, as I said, it surprised me that it was pretty enjoyable. Going into it, I'm going to look at character storylines in this because there are just so many characters in it, well, in storylines, and I've watched the 3 episodes together that they all sort of blur together. Going to these smaller ones, we have Isildur and his survival, obviously, since Isildur is the extremely great grandfather of Aragorn, and considering the fact that he has no kids and is also one of the people who helps found Gondor alongside his brother, well, I think that it's pretty obvious that Isildur wouldn't have died. And then there's just the fact that Isildur is, just a major character, and they were gonna go and kill him off screen, and we actually know how he dies. So yeah, there's no doubt about it. But his storyline, honestly, it's decent and enjoyable. It was more of a setup in that happened in the 3rd episode, so we don't know too much about it. But I'm excited to see where it goes. Isildur does have one of the more compelling roles to have since so many people just associate him with his moment of weakness where he refuses to destroy the ring. And that's a flaw shared with him, Boromir, and Denethor, where we see all of them with their most prominent moment being their greatest moment of weakness in their life. And they were all just generally great people overall, led their people through very hard times. And while Denethor is more of a bad person in terms of Faramir and treating Boromir with just a little more respect, it still isn't as extreme in the books as it is in the movies, and Denethor has been kind of given the really short end of it since everyone thinks he's this crazy guy, but this was all due to him being destroyed by the Palantir. But I probably should stop talking about that for now because it is completely unrelated to what I'm talking about with this show specifically. Going on to the story with are Wizard and Nori. Honestly, I think that this story is, well, that's what it's currently doing. Not too much interest for me yet. I do hope that this is the Blue Wizard storyline, and the fact that we have two wizards here, and a little more ambiguous stuff about them, where some accounts say that the Blue Wizards fell like Saruman, and others saying that they helped and prevented the fall of Sauron. Well, technically, it's the same source, being Tolkien himself, and him changing the story of them. So, well, I did get this sort of when I was watching a video talking about the show, but I think that the channel Nerd of the Rings is probably, it's probably right, or at least I hope he's right, that we'll be seeing the two different backstories of the Blue Wizards written by Tolkien being adapted, with one being a good person who helps the people of Rune rise up against Sauron, and the other being a dark wizard who created evil cults and helped Sauron out. So, honestly, I'd say it'd be pretty interesting for them to do that, and I do hope that theory, again, not mine, but one that I saw from the channel Nerd of the Rings, brought up. But honestly, who knows if it will be right, and if they're just going to go for the very simple answer of this being younger versions of Gandalf and Saruman, but that kind of ruins the Saruman twist that would eventually happen in Lord of the Rings, since you'd see that he was already an evil person at the beginning. Now, moving on to some of the more major storylines. The stuff with Numenor was honestly pretty interesting. This is going to be very major going on in the future. We're seeing Farazan taking over the island, and he'll eventually take the name of Ar-Pharazôn. Since, everyone knows the character so much like that, that actually, knows the lore, it's gonna be a lot better to be just saying Ar-Pharazôn once he takes the title, probably next episode. But yeah, honestly, everything with him, I really like the manipulations with him, and I feel like it's a near certainty that we're going to be seeing Isildur's sister die in the sinking of Numenor. But also everything with Queen Muriel was done pretty interestingly. I really like how she's kind of manipulated by her enemies, and I wonder if we're just gonna see Farazan taking power and just kind of forcing her to the side, or see if they do what he did in the books and marry her, since they are closely related. Who knows if they're gonna, want to do something like that in the modern day, but I still think it would be interesting and help show how Farazan is a really bad person. Moving on, actually, to something I a little bit missed, what that is the fact that I don't remember her name, but the person that Elf was in love with, the village healer, died in between seasons. I do think they probably should have had just at least an episode explaining that, but still, I think that it was done well enough with the reaction of everyone and having her have a send off. I'm not sure if the actress didn't want to return at all. I don't think the actress passed away, but I might be wrong. But it was honestly just pretty well done with everything in that and the story around Isildur. But there was not much with that storyline, so I nearly forgot about it, and it just popped into my head while I was recording that last section. Moving on to the last of the more, I want to say minor, but still pretty important stories, that of the dwarves, and honestly, Durin the Fourth is just probably the best part of the show. The character is just so much fun, and him and his wife. I know a lot of people use the wife as just a criticism against the show, but honestly, she's a really good character in it. I really like the dynamic between her and Durin, and between him and his father is even more compelling as both are shown to be very arrogant, very full of themselves, and very much thinking that they're in the right. I really like this adaptation, and honestly, the two characters are just really great. They do a great job together, and with the eventual forging of the dwarf rings at the end of episode 3, I really like how they were tied into that with the dwarves being manipulated by Sauron. Who, don't worry, I'll be mentioning him in a minute, but them doing that to try and save their mountain and the rings we sent out to the dwarf lords is honestly going to be really interesting. I want to see how the corruption begins, and although I feel like it's probably going to be happening, I don't really want to see the Balrog take over Moria since that happened just so much later in the timeline. I feel like we're probably going to get something with the Balrog in this season, but who knows? Because I think if they're going to at least stay true to what Tolkien wrote, they can't have the dwarves lose Moria at all during the show. But they're going to be doing something with the Balrog since they spent all the money to create the entire Balrog digital model. Now, moving on to just the big two stories. We have the stories of the elves and the story of Sauron. Speaking of the elves first, uh, I understand why they wrote the storyline in where Elrond is extremely hesitant of the rings after learning that Sauron is behind it. And as I said, I understand why that was involved in the story. It just feels like us knowing that Elrond will later become a wielder of the rings, it just made me kind of roll my eyes a little bit where I'm thinking we already know that Elrond will eventually not only accept the fact that the rings exist, but use one of them himself. So honestly, I felt like a little more of forced tension for this. But besides that, I think that everything was pretty good. Galadriel was taking a real beating for everything she did last season. A lot of the criticisms about her has her being humbled during the season, seeing that she's made mistakes and she needs to learn from them. And I think her character being humbled a lot is really good and important for the story. But now to move to honestly, just the absolute best part of this season, Sauron. And everything with Sauron in this is honestly incredible. I I don't know, the last season with Sauron being a mystery it was just kind of dumb, but now that the actor is fully able to go and be just the evil villain, it is just so much better. I honestly really have been loving everything with Sauron. With the first episode, him manipulating everything in Mordor for him to have an army to attack the elves, where the leader doesn't want to be with him. And his recast, I think, was pretty good. I didn't really notice that the character has been changed by actor. So honestly, like that was a he did a good job in it, although he really only was in it for a little bit for the season so far. But yeah, honestly, it is just great to see Sauron being the full manipulator and sort of putting season one into context where it seems like he never wanted to be the good person and was always pushing people to do things that he wanted. So everything that happened in the season was stuff he wanted to happen, and he was just acting reluctant to push characters like Galadriel and others into doing the things he wanted. And that's just the start of it. It gets better and better as he continues using these manipulations to push things forward. And honestly, just the best part of the season so far, and clearly what's just my favorite, is the entire storyline where he reveals he is Anatar to Celebrimbor, and then begins to manipulate him into doing things he would never do, so he can go and make the 7 and the 9. So far, he's only made the 7, and those will be sent out to the dwarves. But we know he'll eventually convince him to make the 9. And we'll also see, as a side note, Celebrimbor create the Doors of Durin. But going back to this, since that's more of a small little Easter egg in there to tease things going on in the future. But returning to, honestly, just this insane storyline, I think that this is honestly the best part of the season so far. Showing something from the books that is just really awesome. Sauron being the full-on manipulator and twisting Celebrimbor to his will, and using Celebrimbor's pride and desire to surpass Feanor and his creation of the Silmarils is honestly just really well done. I really cannot wait to see what happens next with this storyline. Well, I mean, technically, I know exactly what happens next. I have obviously read the stuff, but I know exactly what will happen. I'm not going to say what will happen in case you have not read Tolkien's books, but things are about to get very intense, and even though you don't know exact details, knowing what happens to the 7 and the 9 is going to be making things pretty obvious. But yeah, honestly, as I said, honestly, I really enjoyed these. I feel like this is a definite step up from season 1, where season 1 I'd say is okay at best, and is where I put it, but season 2, it just feels like they took the criticisms from season 1 and actually managed to improve on them. Season is not done yet, and we're just under halfway through it, so who knows? It could go and just fall apart completely in the next 5 episodes. But considering that it's been consistently pretty good this season, I am excited to see what happens next. But I want to know what you think. Please leave me in the comments, and I'll see you on the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.